Someone in Ankara just built a terminal you can press Ctrl-Alt-Enter on and watch the whole shell tilt back into 3D space. Okay, so this thing is called Ratty, and it shipped its first public release on Monday from a solo dev in Turkey named Orhun. He's the guy behind Ratatui, the library half the cool terminal UIs you've seen on GitHub are built on. By the time it hit the front page of Hacker News yesterday, it had 577 points, and the repo crossed 877 stars in basically one day. MIT, licensed, written in Rust, and yes, the cursor is a tiny rat that spins. Here's what's on the page. The hero shows that rat cursor doing its thing in a regular shell prompt. Below that, there's a feature list, spinning cursor, traditional 2D mode, and the new 3D mode, inline 3D objects, GPU-backed text rendering, image support via the Kitty graphics protocol. Then a clip of 3D mode actually toggling on, where the terminal warps backward into the scene like a curved monitor in a void. Install section is short, basically cargo install Ratty or Pacman if you're on Arch. There's a configuration block where you tell it which OBJ or GLB file to use as your cursor. Then a whole gallery of demos, a big rat that's just there in your terminal. A document editor where you can drop 3D models inline next to text, the way Terry Davis did it in TempleOS. A split pane drawing app with a 2D canvas on the left and a live 3D preview on the right. The terminal space already has fast emulators. Alacritty handles GPU rendering. Wezterm does multiplexing. Ghostty is the new darling everyone benchmarks against. Rio sits next to those. They're all fighting over the same axis, which is how many cells per second you can paint without dropping a frame. Ratty isn't on that axis at all. The pitch is the opposite. It says terminals have been flat for 40 years, and maybe that's a constraint nobody questioned. It's the same instinct Terry Davis had when he built TempleOS, where you could embed a 3D mesh next to a paragraph of text and the OS just dealt with it. 4 numbers tell you what this is. 877 stars in roughly 24 hours. 577 points on Hacker News yesterday. 600 plus Rust dependencies in the build tree, because it's literally running a game engine. And one solo maintainer in Ankara who already runs the Ratatui project and is an Arch Linux package maintainer in his other life. Let me walk through what actually ships. There's a spinning rat cursor, that's the default, but you can swap it for any OBJ or GLB asset, including the Ferris crab mascot that's already bundled. There's 3D mode, the keystroke that tilts the whole terminal surface into a scene with depth and lighting. There's Mobius mode, which warps the screen into a curved twist for the meme value. The Kitty graphics protocol works, so any tool that already speaks Kitty for inline images just works. And the toggle is one chord, Ctrl-Alt-Enter, which means you can write code in flat mode and flip into space when you feel like it. The second half is where it gets interesting for builders. Ratty has its own escape sequence protocol called RGP, the Ratty graphics protocol. Any application can write a special escape sequence to standard out that says, register this asset, place this object at row 12, column 40. Animated. There's a Ratatouille widget called Ratatouille RGP that wraps the protocol so you can build TUIs that drop meshes into the buffer the same way you draw a paragraph today. The demos already include a TempleOS-style document editor with embedded objects and a Tetris clone running inside Ratty that someone shipped within days. Here's how the pipeline works end-to-end. A pseudo terminal runs your shell, VT100 parses the escape sequences. Ratatouille draws the buffer in CPU memory. Parley and Velo render text on the GPU. Then the RBA pixels get read back to CPU, copied into a Bevy image, and Bevy presents that texture in either a flat scene or a tilted 3D one. Orhun is honest about the cost of that round trip. The text rendering is GPU-backed, but the bridge to Bevy still goes through CPU memory. A fully GPU-resident path would need a custom render integration that writes directly into a Bevy-owned texture, and that's on the roadmap. Install is one line if you have Rust set up, or one line if you're on Arch. The blog post is candid that the cold build is heavy because the dependency tree includes a full game engine. If you don't want to compile, pre-built binaries are on the releases page for Apple Silicon, Intel, macOS, and Linux. Version 0.2 landed Monday with the things you actually want. Mobius mode was added with proper animation. Window transparency works now. Enhanced keyboard reporting from modified special keys was wired up so apps like Helix and NeoVim play nice. The cursor accepts color configuration. The macOS build pipeline was set up so Apple Silicon and Intel binaries ship from CI, and the protocol got a rename. What used to be toggle mode is now toggle 3D mode, which is the kind of breaking change you make when you decide 3D isn't going away. Look, no one's about to switch their daily driver to this. The footprint is heavy, the protocol is locked to one client, and the text path still does a round trip you can feel on a low-spec machine. But that's the entire pitch. Orhun isn't building a better Alacritty. He's asking why nobody questioned the rectangle for 40 years. If you're the kind of person who looks at Temple OS and feels like there was a path nobody walked down, you already know whether you're spending the weekend on this.